Sarah's termination letter feels like a death sentence. Rent overdue, mom's medical bills crushing her. The elevator lurches to a stop between floors, trapping her with the one man she never wanted to see again. Alexander Cross, the CEO who just destroyed her life, watches her crumble. What she did next shocked everyone. Before we begin, write in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Enjoy watching. The elevator shudders violently, then goes completely still. Sarah's stomach drops as the lights flicker overhead. She clutches the pink slip in her trembling hands, the words immediate termination burning into her vision like a brand. "No, no, no," she whispers, pressing the emergency button frantically. Nothing happens. Alexander Cross stands in the opposite corner, his charcoal suit immaculate, his dark eyes unreadable. He doesn't even look up from his phone. The silence between them is suffocating. Sarah's breathing becomes shallow. The walls feel like they're closing in. She's trapped 47 floors above the ground with the man who just destroyed her entire world. "This can't be happening," she says, her voice cracking. "Not today. Not with you." Alexander finally looks up. His expression is cold, professional. "The building's backup generators will kick in soon. Maintenance will have us out within an hour." "An hour?" Sarah's voice rises to a near shriek. "I can't be stuck here for an hour. I have to get home. My mom needs her medication, and I just lost my job because of you." She waves the termination letter in the air like a weapon. Alexander's eyes follow the movement, but his face remains stone. The decision was based on company restructuring. It wasn't personal. "Not personal," Sarah laughs, but there's no humor in it. "You have no idea what personal is." The elevator lurches again, and Sarah stumbles backward against the wall. Her chest tightens, her heart pounds so hard she can hear it in her ears. The panic is setting in fast. "I can't breathe," she gasps, clawing at her throat. "I can't. The walls are—" Alexander takes a step toward her, but she holds her hand up to stop him. Don't you dare pretend to care now." She slides down the wall until she's sitting on the floor, knees drawn to her chest. The termination letter crumples in her fist. 3 years of her life gone. 3 years of working 16-hour days, skipping meals, sacrificing everything for this company. For him. "My mom has cancer," she says quietly, staring at the floor. "Stage 3 breast cancer. The treatments cost $8,000 a month. My insurance through your company was the only thing keeping her alive." Alexander's phone buzzes. He glances at it, then puts it away without answering. "There's no signal up here anyway." Sarah laughs bitterly. "Perfect. Just perfect. Even your billion-dollar technology can't save us now." The emergency lighting kicks in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Sarah's breathing becomes more erratic. The walls seem to pulse with each heartbeat. "I worked every weekend for you," she continues, her voice growing stronger with anger. "I missed birthdays, holidays, dates. I gave you everything, Alexander, and this is how you repay me?" She struggles to her feet, swaying slightly. The termination letter in her hand is wrinkled beyond recognition now. "You want to know what's really funny?" she says, taking a step toward him. "I actually thought you cared. All those late nights when you'd bring me coffee, all those times you asked about my mom, I thought, maybe, just maybe, you saw me as more than just another employee." Alexander's jaw tightens. "Sarah." "No." She throws the crumpled letter at his feet. It bounces off his expensive leather shoes and lands between them like a declaration of war. "Happy now? Is this what you wanted? To watch me fall apart?" The letter sits there, a symbol of everything broken between them. Alexander stares down at it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Sarah's panic attack intensifies. Her vision blurs at the edges. She grips the elevator rail so tightly her knuckles turn white. "I can't do this," she whispers. "I can't be trapped in here with you. Not after what you've done." Alexander checks his phone again, but the no-signal icon mocks them both. He looks at Sarah, really looks at her, for the first time since the doors closed. Her face is pale, her breathing labored. Dark circles under her eyes tell the story of too many sleepless nights. Slowly, deliberately, he kneels down and picks up the crumpled termination letter. His fingers smooth out the wrinkles as he reads it, word by word, line by line. Sarah watches him, her chest heaving. You read my personnel file. You knew about my mom. You knew about the medical bills, and you fired me anyway. Alexander continues reading, his face a mask, but something flickers in his dark eyes. Regret? Guilt? Sarah can't tell. 3 years, she repeats. 3 years of my life, and you threw me away like I was nothing. The elevator shudders again, reminding them both that they're suspended between floors with nowhere to run. Alexander finishes reading the letter and looks up at her. Sarah, he says, his voice softer than she's ever heard it.
The lights go out completely. Not just dimmed, but total, absolute darkness. Sarah's gasp echoes in the small space as the elevator plunges them into a black void. "Oh God," she whispers, her voice shaking. "Oh God, no." The emergency lighting that had been glowing red is gone. The display panel showing floor numbers is dead. Even the tiny light on Alexander's phone has vanished. They might as well be buried alive. "Sarah," Alexander's voice cuts through the darkness, steady and calm. "It's okay. The backup generators probably failed, but they'll get them running again." "You don't understand." Sarah's breathing becomes rapid, panicked. I can't do this. I can't be in the dark, not in a small space, not trapped." She fumbles frantically along the walls, searching for anything, any source of light. Her hands shake as they slide across the smooth metal surfaces. "I need to get out," she says, her voice rising. "I need to get out right now." She pounds on the doors with her fists, the sound echoing uselessly in the shaft above and below them. "Sarah, listen to me." Alexander's voice moves closer to her in the darkness, steady and calm. "It's okay. You're having a panic attack. You need to slow your breathing." "Don't tell me what I need," she snaps, but her voice cracks with fear. "You have no idea what this feels like. The walls are closing in. I can't see anything. I can't breathe." Her breathing becomes more labored, coming in short, desperate gasps. In the darkness, Alexander can hear her sliding down the wall again. "Listen to my voice," he says, his tone becoming softer, more gentle than she's ever heard it. "Just listen to my voice and follow my breathing." I can't do this. I can't be in the dark, not in a small space, not trapped." "Yes, you can." Alexander's voice moves closer. She can hear him settling down on the floor near her, but not too close. "Breathe in slowly through your nose, hold it for 4 counts, then breathe out through your mouth." "It's not working," Sarah gasps. "Nothing's working." "It will," Alexander says firmly. "Trust me. Breathe in, hold, and out. Do it with me." Sarah tries to focus on his voice in the darkness. It becomes her lifeline, the only real thing in the black void surrounding them. Slowly, very slowly, her breathing begins to match his rhythm. "That's it. In, hold, out. You're doing great." Minutes pass in the darkness. Sarah's panic gradually subsides, replaced by exhaustion. When she finally speaks, her voice is small and tired. "How long do you think we'll be stuck here?" "I don't know," Alexander admits. "Could be hours." The word hours makes Sarah's chest tighten again, but she forces herself to keep breathing steadily, in through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. "I need to tell you something," Alexander says after a long pause, "about the firing, about why it happened." Sarah says nothing, but he can hear her listening in the darkness. "I never wanted to fire anyone. The board of directors forced my hand. They said we had to cut 20% of the workforce or they'd replace me as CEO. "So you chose to save yourself?" Sarah says bitterly. "I chose to save the jobs of the other 80%. If they'd fired me, my replacement would have cut 50%, maybe more." Sarah absorbs this information in the darkness. It doesn't make the pain go away, but it changes something. "Why are you telling me this?" she asks. "Because you deserve to know the truth." Another long silence stretches between them. In the complete darkness, the normal barriers feel different. It's easier to talk when you can't see the other person's face. "My mom was diagnosed 2 years ago. Breast cancer. Stage 3, but the doctors caught it in time. The treatments were working, but they're expensive, really expensive. Alexander listens without interrupting. The insurance through your company covered 80%. I was paying the other 20% plus living expenses. It was tight, but we were managing. She was getting better. Sarah, Alexander says softly, now I have nothing. No job, no insurance, no way to pay for her treatments. She'll have to stop the chemotherapy. And without that, She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. I'm so sorry, Alexander says, and he means it. I never knew the details. I knew you had family medical expenses, but I didn't know. Why would you? Sarah asks. I'm just employee number 2847 to you. Just another name on a list. No, Alexander says firmly. You're not. Something in his tone makes Sarah's heart skip a beat. In the darkness, his voice sounds different, more human, more real. My mom was diagnosed 2 years ago. Breast cancer, stage 3, but the doctors caught it in time. The treatments were working, but they're expensive, really expensive. Alexander listens without interrupting. The insurance through your company covered 80%. I was paying the other 20% plus living expenses. It was tight, but we were managing. She was getting better. Sarah, Alexander says softly, but now I have nothing. No job, no insurance, no way to pay for her treatments. She'll have to stop the chemotherapy. And without that, She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. I'm so sorry, Alexander says, and he means it. I never knew the details. I knew you had family medical expenses, but I didn't know. Why would you? Sarah asks. I'm just employee number 2847 to you. Just another name on a list. No, Alexander says firmly. You're not. You brought me coffee every Tuesday for 6 months. Extra cream, no sugar. You remembered my mom's appointment dates. You asked how she was doing. Why did you do that if you were just another employee? Alexander is quiet for so long that Sarah wonders if he heard her. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. Because you matter to me. The words hang in the darkness between them like a confession. Sarah's breath catches in her throat. What do you mean? Before Alexander can answer, the elevator shudders slightly. Then suddenly, the emergency lights flicker back to life. The red glow fills the small space, and Sarah blinks as her eyes adjust to the light. She looks across at Alexander, and what she sees in his eyes makes her forget how to breathe for entirely different reasons. There's something there she never expected to see, something that changes everything. Vulnerability, pain, and something else that makes her heart race in a way that has nothing to do with panic attacks. Alexander, she whispers, but before she can say more, the elevator lurches suddenly upward.
The elevator lurches upward with a grinding mechanical sound that makes Sarah's stomach drop. She grabs the handrail as the car jerks and shudders, climbing slowly toward the 48th floor. They're moving us, Alexander says, standing quickly and extending his hand to help her up. Sarah hesitates for a moment, looking at his outstretched hand. After everything that happened in the darkness, everything he said, touching him feels dangerous. But her legs are shaky from the panic attacks, so she takes his hand and lets him pull her to her feet. The moment their skin touches, electricity shoots between them. Alexander feels it too. She can see it in the way his eyes widen slightly, the way he doesn't immediately let go of her hand. The elevator dings softly as it reaches the 48th floor. The doors slide open to reveal 3 firefighters in full gear and a building maintenance supervisor. "Are you folks okay?" the lead firefighter asks, shining a flashlight into the elevator. "We've been working to get you out for the past 8 hours." 8 hours? Sarah's voice is barely a whisper. It felt like forever and no time at all. "Yes, ma'am. Power grid failure took out half the building. We had to manually override the elevator system." Sarah steps out of the elevator on unsteady legs. The hallway lighting is dim. They're still running on backup power. She realizes she's still holding Alexander's hand and quickly pulls away. "I need to get home," she says, but her voice sounds strange, distant.
My mom will be worried sick." "Ma'am, you don't look so good," one of the firefighters says, studying her pale face and shaking hands. "When's the last time you had something to eat or drink?" Sarah tries to remember. She had coffee this morning before the meeting where she got fired. That was, God, how many hours ago? "I'm fine," she insists, but as she takes a step forward, her knees buckle. Alexander catches her before she hits the ground. His strong arms wrap around her waist, pulling her against his chest. For a moment, she lets herself lean into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart through his expensive shirt. "She needs medical attention," Alexander tells the firefighters. "She's dehydrated, and she had several panic attacks while we were trapped." "No," Sarah protests weakly. "I can't afford a hospital. I just lost my insurance, remember?" Alexander's jaw tightens. "I'll handle it." "You'll handle it?" Sarah tries to push away from him, but her arms feel like rubber. "It's not charity," he says firmly. "It's responsibility." The ambulance arrives 20 minutes later. Sarah sits in a chair in the hallway, sipping water that Alexander brought her from a vending machine. She can't stop her hands from shaking. "Blood pressure's low, blood sugar's low," the paramedic tells Alexander after checking Sarah's vitals. "She needs IV fluids and monitoring. We should take her to St. Mary's." "No," Sarah says again, but her protest sounds weak even to her own ears. Alexander kneels down in front of her chair. "Sarah, you're dehydrated and you've been under extreme stress. You need medical care." "I said I can't afford it." "And I said I'll handle it." His voice is gentle but firm. "Please, let me do this." Sarah looks into his eyes, those same eyes that revealed so much in the darkness of the elevator. There's something there that makes her want to trust him, even though every logical part of her brain is screaming warnings. "Okay," she whispers, "but I'm paying you back." Alexander's mouth quirks into the ghost of a smile. "We'll discuss that later." The ambulance ride is a blur. Sarah drifts in and out of consciousness as the IV drip slowly rehydrates her body. Alexander rides with her, his hand holding hers the entire way. At the hospital, they wheel her into the emergency room. Alexander speaks quietly with the admissions nurse, pulling out his black credit card. Sarah wants to protest, but she's too tired to fight anymore. "I'll be right here," Alexander tells her as they take her into an examination room. "I'm not going anywhere." Sarah's last clear memory before the doctor gives her something to help her sleep is seeing Alexander settling into an uncomfortable plastic chair in the waiting room. His expensive suit is wrinkled from our hours in the elevator. His usually perfect hair is messed up, but he doesn't seem to care. She gets dressed quickly, yanking out the IV and ignoring the nurse who protests that she hasn't been officially discharged. She needs to find Alexander. She needs to give this back to him before he thinks he can buy his way out of what he's done. She finds him in the hospital cafeteria, still wearing yesterday's wrinkled suit. He's staring into a cup of coffee that's probably stone cold by now. He looks like he hasn't slept at all. "Looking for this?" Sarah asks, holding up the check. Alexander looks up, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. "Sarah, you should be resting. I should be a lot of things, but right now I need to give you this." She drops the check on the table in front of him. It flutters down like a white flag of surrender. "I don't want your money, Alexander," she says, her voice steady and strong. "I want my job back."
Monday morning arrives gray and cold, matching Sarah's mood perfectly. She stands outside the gleaming glass towers of Cross Industries, clutching her purse like armor. She's not here to beg. She's not here to grovel. She's here to get what's rightfully hers. The lobby bustles with employees starting their week, all of them in expensive suits and carrying designer coffee cups. Sarah feels underdressed in her simple black dress, the same one she wore to job interviews last week that led nowhere.
She takes the elevator to the 50th floor, where Alexander's executive suite overlooks the entire city. The same elevator where everything changed between them just 4 days ago. Her palms sweat as she remembers his voice in the darkness, the vulnerability in his eyes when the lights came back on. "Excuse me, miss, do you have an appointment?" The receptionist's voice is polite but firm. Her nameplate reads Jessica, and her smile doesn't reach her eyes. "I'm here to see Mr. Cross," Sarah says, walking past the reception desk toward the large oak doors marked CEO. "Ma'am, you can't just—" Jessica stands quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor as she follows Sarah. "Security?" she calls, reaching for her phone. But before she can dial, the office doors open. Alexander stands there in a navy blue suit that probably costs more than Sarah's monthly rent. His dark hair is perfectly styled, his face clean-shaven. He looks nothing like the vulnerable man who held her hand in the hospital. "It's all right, Jessica," he says calmly. "Ms. Martinez has an appointment." Sarah raises an eyebrow. "I do?" "You do now." He steps aside, gesturing for her to enter his office. "Please, come in." Jessica looks confused but returns to her desk. Sarah walks into Alexander's office, her chin held high. The space is enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. His desk is the size of a small car, made of rich mahogany that gleams under the recessed lighting. Alexander closes the door behind them and walks to his desk. Sarah remains standing near the entrance, arms crossed. "You look better," he says, studying her face. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone who needs her job back. Did you think that check would make me go away quietly? Did you think $50,000 would solve your guilty conscience?" Alexander sits down behind his desk and gestures to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." "I'll stand, thank you." "Sarah, I have a proposition for you." "I don't want your propositions. I want my old job back." Alexander opens a folder on his desk and pulls out a document. "Your old position has been eliminated, permanently. The entire marketing department was restructured, but I have something else in mind." Despite herself, Sarah takes a step closer to his desk. "What kind of something else?" "I need a new personal assistant," Alexander says, sliding the document across the mahogany surface toward her. "My current assistant is retiring next month, and I need someone I can trust, someone who knows the company inside and out." "Why me?" Sarah asks. "Because you're the best employee this company ever had. Because you're smart, dedicated, and you're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong." His dark eyes meet hers. "And because I trust you." "After what happened in that elevator, you think I trust you?" Alexander's jaw tightens. "I hope you'll give me a chance to earn it back." Sarah finally looks down at the contract in her hands. The salary figure at the top makes her gasp. "This can't be right." "It's triple your previous salary, plus full health benefits, dental, vision, and a medical expense account for your family." The number swims before Sarah's eyes. With this salary, she could pay for her mother's treatments, catch up on rent, maybe even save some money for the first time in years. But something feels wrong about it. "This is guilt money," Sarah says, throwing the contract back on his desk. "You're trying to buy your way out of what you did to me." "There's more," Alexander continues, as if she hasn't spoken. "The position requires extensive travel. You'd be accompanying me to meetings, conferences, business trips around the world. London, Tokyo, Paris, New York." Sarah's heart skips. Travel has always been her dream, but working 3 jobs to support her mother never left time for dreams. "What's the catch?" she asks suspiciously. Alexander hesitates for just a moment. "There's no catch. Read the contract."
Sarah picks up the document again, scanning through the legal language. Standard employment terms, vacation days, sick leave, confidentiality agreements. But at the bottom of page 3, one clause makes her heart stop. "What is this?" she asks, pointing to the paragraph that seems to burn off the page. Alexander stands and walks around his desk until he's standing directly in front of her, close enough that she can smell his cologne, the same scent that surrounded her in the elevator. "It's exactly what it says," he replies quietly. Sarah reads the clause again, her pulse racing. The words don't change, but they still don't make sense. "This says that we would be—" She looks up at him, her cheeks flushing red. "Alexander, what exactly are you asking me to do?"
Sarah stares at the contract clause, her heart pounding. The words seem to blur together as she reads them again. "It's a standard confidentiality agreement," Alexander says quietly, but there's something in his voice that suggests it's anything but standard. "When we travel together, there may be situations where we need to appear close. Business dinners, client events, industry conferences. Some of my competitors would love to find any weakness they could exploit." "Appear close? How?" Sarah's voice is barely a whisper. Alexander steps closer, close enough that she has to tilt her head back to look at him. "As a couple. My girlfriend, to be specific." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" "Only when necessary. Only for business." But the way he's looking at her suggests it might be more complicated than that. Sarah's mind races. This explains the high salary, the travel, the strange feeling that this job offer was too good to be true. "And if I refuse?" "Then you refuse." "But Sarah, your mother needs surgery next month. The medical bills alone will bankrupt you without this salary." He's right, and they both know it. Sarah looks down at the contract again, at the number that could save her mother's life. 2 weeks, she says finally. "Give me 2 weeks to think about it." "You have 1 week. We leave for Chicago on Monday." 3 days later, Sarah finds herself in a first-class airplane seat, watching clouds drift past the window. She signed the contract yesterday, her signature shaky but determined. The medical expense account alone would cover her mother's surgery with money left over. Now she's on her first business trip as Alexander Cross's personal assistant and fake girlfriend. The Chicago hotel is more luxurious than anywhere Sarah has ever stayed. The lobby gleams with marble and gold, and their rooms are on the 32nd floor with views of Lake Michigan. "Your room is across the hall from mine," Alexander tells her as they wait for the elevator. "If you need anything, just call." Their rooms are indeed separate, as he promised, but somehow that makes the tension worse, not better. Sarah unpacks her suitcase in her elegant suite, hyper-aware that Alexander is just 50 feet away, probably doing the same thing. At 7 o'clock, they meet in the lobby for the client dinner. Sarah has chosen her most professional dress, black, conservative, appropriate. But when Alexander sees her, something flickers in his dark eyes that makes her pulse quicken. "You look beautiful," he says simply. "Thank you," Sarah replies, but the compliment feels dangerous. The restaurant is the kind of place where the menu has no prices, and the wine list is longer than most novels. Alexander guides her to a table where 3 men in expensive suits are waiting. "Gentlemen," Alexander says, his hand settling on the small of Sarah's back, "I'd like you to meet Sarah Martinez, my girlfriend." The word girlfriend sends electricity through Sarah's entire body. She forces herself to smile and shake hands with each man, playing her part perfectly. Throughout dinner, Sarah watches Alexander work. He commands the room with quiet authority, never raising his voice, but somehow dominating every conversation.
When one of the clients makes a crude joke, Alexander's expression doesn't change, but the temperature at the table drops 10 degrees. Sarah works in marketing, Alexander says when one of the men asks about her job. She's brilliant. Just came up with a campaign that increased our client retention by 30%. Sarah blinks in surprise. That campaign was from her old job, something she'd mentioned to Alexander months ago in passing. She had no idea he remembered. The dinner ends successfully. Alexander secures a multi-million-dollar contract, and the clients leave happy. As they walk back through the hotel lobby, Sarah's feet are killing her in her high heels. "You were perfect tonight," Alexander tells her as they wait for the elevator. "Thank you." "I just followed your lead," Sarah says, but she's glowing from the praise. They ride up to their floor in comfortable silence. At her door, Sarah fumbles with her key card, suddenly nervous about being alone with him in the hallway. "Sarah," Alexander says as she finally gets her door open. "Yes?" "Get some rest. We have an early meeting tomorrow." He disappears into his own room, leaving Sarah standing in her doorway, feeling strangely disappointed. An hour later, there's a knock on her door. She opens it to find a room service waiter with a cart laden with covered dishes. "I didn't order anything," she tells the waiter. "Compliments of Mr. Cross." The waiter wheels the cart into her room. When he leaves, Sarah lifts the silver covers to reveal all her favorite foods: Thai pad thai, chocolate cake, fresh strawberries, and a bottle of wine. How does Alexander know all my favorites? She's still wondering when her phone buzzes with a text from him. "Join me on the balcony? The view is incredible." Sarah looks toward her own balcony, then realizes he means his. She slips on her shoes and walks across the hall, carrying the wine. Alexander's balcony is larger than hers, with a perfect view of the Chicago skyline. He's changed out of his suit into jeans and a white button-down shirt. Somehow, this casual version of him is even more dangerous than the CEO. "Thank you for the food," Sarah says, settling into one of the patio chairs. "How did you know?" "I pay attention," Alexander says, pouring wine into 2 glasses. "Your lunch orders, what you eat when you're stressed, what makes you smile." They sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights twinkle below them. The wine makes Sarah feel warm and relaxed. "Tell me about your father," Alexander says suddenly. The question catches Sarah off guard. "Why?" "Because you never mention him, and I want to know." Sarah takes a long sip of wine. "He left when I was 12. Said he couldn't handle my mom's depression, couldn't handle being responsible for us. Just packed his bags one day and never came back." Alexander's jaw tightens. "I'm sorry." "What about your father?" Sarah asks. Alexander stares out at the city for a long moment. "Car accident when I was 25. He was driving home from the office, working late as usual. Drunk driver ran a red light." Sarah's heart clenches. "Alexander, I'm so sorry." "I became CEO overnight. The board wanted to sell the company, but I fought them, spent 3 years proving I could fill his shoes." He takes a drink of wine. "Some days I still feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not." The vulnerability in his voice makes Sarah want to reach for his hand, but she doesn't dare. A cool breeze blows across the balcony and Sarah shivers. Without a word, Alexander stands and drapes his suit jacket around her shoulders. It smells like expensive cologne and something else she can't name, something that feels like safety. "Better?" he asks, his hands lingering on her shoulders. Sarah looks up at him, and for a moment, the fake relationship feels dangerously real. "Better?" Alexander asks, his hands lingering on Sarah's shoulders. Sarah looks up at him, her heart racing. The Chicago skyline glitters behind him like diamonds scattered across black velvet. His jacket wraps around her like a warm embrace, and for a moment she forgets this is all pretend. "Much better," she whispers. Alexander's eyes drop to her lips for just a second, but it's enough to make Sarah's breath catch. The space between them feels electric, charged with possibilities that neither of them dares to speak out loud. "Sarah," he says softly, his voice rougher than usual. "Yes?" Before he can answer, his phone rings. The harsh sound shatters the moment like glass breaking. Alexander steps back, his hands falling away from her shoulders as he glances at the caller ID. "I should take this," he says, but his voice sounds almost regretful. "Board member." Sarah nods, wrapping his jacket tighter around herself. "Of course, I should get some sleep anyway." She starts to take off the jacket, but Alexander stops her with a gentle touch. "Keep it," he says. "The nights here get cold." Sarah returns to her room, Alexander's jacket still around her shoulders. She lies awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of the feeling swirling in her chest. This is supposed to be business, a job, a way to save her mother's life. So why does it feel like so much more? The next morning they fly back to New York. The business in Chicago was successful. Alexander secured 3 new major clients, and Sarah played her part perfectly. On the plane, they review the contracts and discuss next week's schedule, falling back into their professional roles. But something has changed between them. Sarah catches Alexander watching her when he thinks she's not looking. When their hands accidentally touch while reaching for the same document, neither of them pulls away immediately. Back at Cross Industries, Sarah settles into her new office, a spacious room right outside Alexander's suite. It's a far cry from her old cubicle in marketing. Jessica, the receptionist, brings her coffee and updates her on Alexander's schedule. "You're lucky," Jessica says, arranging files on Sarah's new desk. "Mr. Cross has never given his assistant an office this nice. Usually they just get a desk in the hallway." Sarah wonders what that means, but before she can ask, Jessica hurries away. At 11 o'clock, Sarah is reviewing travel arrangements for next month's London trip when the elevator dings. The sound of heels clicking on marble makes her look up from her computer. The woman walking toward Alexander's office is stunning. Tall, blonde, with legs that go on forever, and a designer dress that probably costs more than Sarah's monthly salary. She moves with the confidence of someone who knows she belongs in places like this. "Excuse me," Sarah calls out, standing quickly. "Do you have an appointment with Mr. Cross?" The woman turns, and Sarah's breath catches. She's even more beautiful up close, with perfect features and eyes the color of ice. But there's something cold about her smile, something calculating. "I don't need an appointment," the woman says, her voice carrying a slight accent that sounds expensive. "I'm Victoria Sterling." She says the name like it should mean something to Sarah. When Sarah doesn't react, Victoria's smile becomes sharper. "I'm Alexander's fiancée," she adds, holding up her left hand. The engagement ring is enormous, a flawless diamond surrounded by smaller stones that catch the light like captured stars. Sarah feels like the floor has just dropped out from under her. "I wasn't aware that Mr. Cross was engaged," she manages to say. "Oh, we keep it quiet for business reasons," Victoria says, already moving toward Alexander's door. "I've been in Paris for the past 6 months, but now I'm back. Alex will be so surprised." Before Sarah can stop her, Victoria opens Alexander's door without knocking. "Surprise, darling!" Victoria's voice carries across the office. Sarah stays frozen at her desk, her heart pounding. Through the open door, she can hear Alexander's voice, surprised and not entirely pleased. "Victoria, I wasn't expecting you." I flew in this morning. Couldn't wait another day to see you. Sarah tries to focus on her computer screen, but the words blur together. Engaged. Alexander is engaged to a woman who looks like she stepped off the cover of a magazine. We had an agreement, Alex. 2 years to build your company, then we'd set a date. Well, it's been 2 years. Sarah glances up and sees Victoria leaning against Alexander's desk, her perfect body language screaming ownership. Alexander stands behind his desk, his expression unreadable. Victoria, this is not the time or place for this conversation. Then when is then? You've been avoiding my calls for weeks. Sarah suddenly understands why Alexander needed a fake girlfriend for business trips. Victoria Sterling isn't just beautiful, she's possessive, and she clearly expects to be the future Mrs. Cross. Sarah, Alexander calls out, his voice carrying easily across the space. Could you give us a moment, please? Sarah nods, gathering her purse and practically fleeing to the break room. She sits at a small table, her hands shaking as she tries to process what just happened. Engaged. Alexander is engaged to a woman who looks like she stepped off the cover of a magazine. That whole time he's been engaged to another woman. The contract, the fake relationship, the moment on the balcony in Chicago, none of it meant anything. She was just a convenient actress playing a role. That evening is the annual Cross Industries Gala, held in the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. Sarah had forgotten about it until Jessica reminded her that morning. As Alexander's assistant, she's expected to attend. She chooses a simple black dress from her limited wardrobe and arrives at the hotel feeling completely out of place. The ballroom is filled with New York's elite, politicians, celebrities, business moguls. Everyone looks like they belong here. Everyone except her. Sarah finds a quiet corner and watches the party from a distance. Alexander works the room with practiced ease, shaking hands and making conversation. And right beside him, like she was born for this role, is Victoria Sterling. Victoria has changed into a stunning red gown that clings to her perfect figure. Her arm is linked through Alexander's, and she smiles and laughs at the right moments. They look perfect together. Two beautiful, powerful people who clearly belong in this world. When the band begins to play, Alexander leads Victoria onto the dance floor. Sarah watches from across the room as they move together with practiced grace. Victoria whispered something in Alexander's ear that made him smile, and Sarah feels her heart break a little more. Then Victoria rises on her tiptoes and kisses Alexander, right there in front of everyone. It's a claiming kiss, a public declaration of ownership. But as Victoria's lips press against his, Alexander's eyes open. They search the crowded ballroom until they find Sarah standing alone in her corner. For a moment that lasts forever, their eyes lock across the room.
Enormous engagement ring glittering on Victoria's finger. And it definitely doesn't change the fact that Sarah has been living in a fantasy. She turns and walks quickly toward the exit, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Behind her, the party continues. Laughter, music, the sound of champagne glasses clinking in celebration. But all Sarah can hear is the sound of her own heart breaking. The next morning, Sarah sits at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a blank piece of paper. Her laptop is open beside her, showing a basic resignation letter template. She's written and deleted the first sentence 5 times. Finally, she starts typing. Dear Mr. Cross, please accept this letter as my formal notice of resignation from my position as personal assistant. My last day will be Friday, November 15th. She pauses, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. What else can she say? That she fell for her boss who was engaged to someone else? That she confused business with pleasure? That she was stupid enough to think the fake relationship meant something real? She keeps it simple. Thank you for the opportunity. I wish you and Cross Industries continued success. Sincerely, Sarah Martinez. She prints the letter, signs it, and seals it in an envelope before she can change her mind. Then she gets dressed for what will be one of her last days at Cross Industries. The morning passes slowly. Alexander is in back-to-back meetings, and Sarah handles his calls and emails like the professional she's trained herself to be. She places the resignation letter in the center of his desk, where he can't miss it. At lunchtime, she's restocking supplies in the small supply room when she hears the door close behind her. She turns to find Alexander standing there, her resignation letter in his hand. "What is this?" he asks, holding up the envelope. "I think it's pretty clear. I'm giving you 2 weeks' notice. You can't quit." "Watch me," Sarah laughs, but there's no humor in it. "About last night?" "Don't." Sarah spins around to face him. "Don't you dare try to explain last night. I saw you dancing with your fiancée. I saw her kiss you. I get it, okay? I was temporary, a convenient fake girlfriend for business trips." Alexander steps closer, and Sarah backs up until she hits the shelves. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because what I think is that you're engaged to Victoria Sterling and you've been playing games with me for weeks." Sarah's voice rises. "I'm not your consolation prize, Alexander. I won't be the woman you string along while you figure out your real relationship. Victoria is not She has a ring, a huge, expensive ring that she says came from you." Alexander runs his hand through his hair, frustrated. "It's complicated. It's really not." Sarah tries to push past him toward the door, but Alexander moves to block her path. "Let me go." "No." "Alexander, move. Not until you listen to me." Sarah tries to step around him again, but Alexander reaches out and grabs her wrist. Not hard, not to hurt her, but firm enough to stop her from walking away. His touch sends electricity up her arm just like it did in Chicago. "Please," he says quietly, "just listen." Sarah looks down at his hand wrapped around her wrist, then up into his dark eyes. She should pull away. She should demand that he let her go. Instead, she finds herself standing perfectly still. "Victoria's ring isn't from me," Alexander says. "It's from her previous engagement, to a banker in London. She never took it off." Sarah's eyebrows furrow. "What?" "We dated years ago, before I became CEO. It was convenient. 2 powerful families, good for business. But we were never engaged. When my father died and I took over the company, Victoria saw an opportunity. She's been pushing for marriage ever since." "But she said you had an agreement." "She made that up. There is no agreement. There never was." Alexander's voice drops to a whisper. "Victoria means nothing to me." Sarah stares into his eyes, searching for any sign that he's lying. But all she sees is honesty. Raw, painful honesty. "Then why did you dance with her? Why did you let her kiss you?" "Because I'm a coward," Alexander admits. "Because it's easier to go along with what people expect than to fight for what I actually want." "And what do you want?" Sarah's voice is barely audible. Alexander's free hand comes up to cup her face, his thumb tracing along her cheekbone. "You. I want you, Sarah. I've wanted you since the first day you brought me coffee and told me my marketing strategy was terrible." Sarah's heart stops. "Alexander." "I know it's complicated. I know your job depends on me, and that makes everything messy. But I can't pretend anymore that this is just business." His voice is rough with emotion. "What I feel for you is real.
It's the most real thing in my life. Sarah can barely breathe. But Victoria is leaving for Paris tomorrow. I told her this morning that there will never be anything between us, that my heart belongs to someone else. The words hang in the air between them like a promise. Alexander's hand is still wrapped around Sarah's wrist, and she can feel his pulse racing as fast as her own. Your heart belongs to someone else? Sarah repeats. To you, Alexander whispers. It belongs to you. The kiss happens so fast that Sarah doesn't have time to think. One moment they're staring at each other in the tiny supply room, and the next moment Alexander's lips are on hers. It's not gentle or sweet, it's desperate, hungry, full of weeks of pent-up desire and unspoken words. Sarah kisses him back with equal desperation, her hands fisting in his expensive shirt. All the walls she's built around her heart crumble in an instant. This is what she's been afraid of, what she's been fighting against since that night in the elevator. This feeling, this overwhelming, terrifying, wonderful feeling of falling completely in love with Alexander Cross. When they finally break apart, both of them are breathing hard. Alexander rests his forehead against hers, his hands still cupping her face. Don't quit, he whispers. Please don't quit. Sarah looks into his eyes and sees her future reflected there. Scary, uncertain, but undeniably real. Okay, I won't quit, she whispers back.
Okay, Sarah whispers back. I won't quit. Alexander's smile is like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. He kisses her again, softer this time, full of relief and promise. When they break apart, Sarah realizes that everything has changed. There's no going back to pretending this is just business. We should probably get back to work, Sarah says, even though the last thing she wants to do is leave this tiny supply room where the world finally makes sense. Probably, Alexander agrees, but he doesn't move away from her. His hands are still cupping her face, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on her cheeks. Alexander, Sarah says softly. I know. He steps back reluctantly, his hands falling to his sides. But Sarah, I want you to know that this isn't going to be easy. Dating your boss never is. There will be rumors, gossip, people who think you got this job because of our relationship. Let them think what they want, Sarah says, surprising herself with her confidence. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters. Alexander's smile widens. Have I mentioned how much I love your courage? Once or twice. Sarah grins back at him. They emerge from the supply room separately, trying to look professional, but Sarah can't stop smiling, and she catches Alexander watching her with an expression that makes her heart flutter. The rest of the afternoon passes in a happy blur. Sarah handles Alexander's calls and emails, but now every interaction feels different. When he asks for coffee, his fingers brush against hers as she hands him the cup. When he calls her into his office to review documents, she's hyper-aware of his presence beside her. At 5 o'clock, Alexander stops by her desk as she's packing up for the day. Dinner tonight? He asks quietly. I'd like that, but maybe somewhere quiet. I'm not ready for the whole world to know about us yet. My place, Alexander suggests. I make a mean pasta. Sarah's heart skips. His apartment. Just the two of them. Okay. But before Alexander can give her his address, his phone rings. He glances at the caller ID and frowns. Richard Palmer, Alexander tells Sarah. Richard Palmer is the chairman of the board of directors. I need to take this. Alexander answers the phone, and Sarah watches his expression change from confusion to anger to something that looks like dread. Yes, sir, Alexander says finally. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hangs up and looks at Sarah with worried eyes. Emergency board meeting. Something about a situation that requires immediate attention. What kind of situation? Sarah asks, but Alexander is already grabbing his suit jacket. I don't know, but Richard sounded furious. Alexander pauses at her desk. Rain check on dinner? Of course, Sarah says, but a cold feeling is settling in her stomach. Alexander disappears into the elevator, and Sarah tries to focus on finishing her work. But 20 minutes later, when she hears raised voices coming from the boardroom down the hall, she knows something is seriously wrong. She walks quietly toward the boardroom, her heels silent on the carpet. Through the thick wooden doors, she can hear fragments of conversation. Completely inappropriate. Conflict of interest. Reputation of this company. And then Alexander's voice, louder than the rest. My personal life is none of your concern. It is when it affects stockholders. That's Richard Palmer's voice, angry and unforgiving. The press got hold of photos from the Chicago trip. You and that girl looking very cozy on a hotel balcony. Sarah's blood turns to ice. Someone photographed them in Chicago. The moment when Alexander gave her his jacket, when they shared wine and stories about their fathers. Someone turned that beautiful memory into ammunition. Sarah Martinez is my assistant, Alexander says firmly. She was acting in a professional capacity. Professional? Another board member laughs harshly. Alexander, the photos show you looking at her like she's the only woman in the world, and the story that's about to break suggests she got her job through, shall we say, intimate means. That's a lie. Alexander's voice is dangerous now. Sarah Martinez is the most qualified, hard-working person in this company. That may be true, Richard Palmer says, but perception is reality in our business. The story hits the morning papers tomorrow. CEO's secret affair with former marketing employee. It makes you look unprofessional and her look opportunistic. Sarah sinks against the wall, her heart pounding. This is exactly what she was afraid of. People thinking she slept her way to her position, that she's nothing more than the boss's mistress. So what are you suggesting? Alexander asks. She goes, quietly, with a generous severance package and a confidentiality agreement, or this company's reputation suffers, our stock price drops, and the board will have no choice but to question your leadership. The silence that follows is deafening. I can picture Alexander standing in that boardroom surrounded by men in expensive suits who see her as nothing more than a problem to be solved. Finally, Alexander speaks. And if I refuse, then we'll call an emergency vote of no confidence. Richard Palmer says coldly. You may be CEO, Alexander, but you're not irreplaceable. Your father built this company, but we can find someone else to run it. I've heard enough. She walks quickly back to her desk and starts packing her personal items into a cardboard box. Photos of her mother, a small plant, the coffee mug Alexander gave her for her birthday last year. Her hands shake as she takes down her nameplate. She writes the letter on company letterhead, her handwriting surprisingly steady. Alexander, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I heard enough of the board meeting to understand the situation. I won't let you lose your company because of me. Your father built Cross Industries, and it's your legacy. I could never forgive myself if I cost you that. I want you to know that what happened between us was real. The feelings, the connection, the love, it was all real. But sometimes loving someone means protecting them from yourself. Take care of yourself, and thank you for showing me what it feels like to be truly seen. Always, Sarah. P.S. Don't try to find me. This is better for both of us. She leaves the letter on Alexander's desk, picks up her box and heads for the elevators. The parking garage is nearly empty at this hour. Sarah loads her box into her old Honda and sits behind the wheel for a moment, trying to catch her breath. This is the right thing to do. The smart thing. The only thing that makes sense. So why does it feel like her heart is being ripped out of her chest? She's just started her car when she hears her name being called. In her rearview mirror, she sees Alexander running across the parking garage, his tie loose, his suit jacket forgotten somewhere upstairs. Sarah, wait! But she's already pulling out of her parking space. She has to leave. For his sake, she has to leave. But as she drives toward the exit, Alexander appears directly in front of her car, his hands spread wide against her hood. "Don't you dare drive away from me," he says through the windshield, and his eyes are filled with such desperate determination that Sarah's resolve starts to crumble.
"Don't you dare drive away from me," Alexander says through the windshield, his hands spread wide against her hood. Sarah's heart pounds as she stares at him through the glass. His tie is loose, his usually perfect hair is messed up, and there's something wild in his dark eyes, something desperate and determined that makes her hands shake on the steering wheel. She turns off the engine and gets out of the car slowly. "Alexander, you don't understand. I heard the board meeting. They're going to vote you out if I don't leave." "Let them," Alexander says fiercely, walking around the car to face her. "Let them vote me out." Sarah stares at him in shock. "You can't mean that. Cross Industries is your life. It's your father's legacy." "My father would understand," Alexander says, taking her hands in his. "He would understand that some things are more important than business. But the company will survive without me. But I won't survive without you." Alexander's voice is raw with emotion. "Sarah, I've spent my whole life doing what other people expected, following the path my father laid out, making decisions based on what's good for business. But for the first time, I want to choose what's good for me. I want to choose love." Sarah feels tears building in her eyes. "Alexander, you're not thinking clearly. You're upset and angry, but I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have in my life." Alexander cups her face in his hands. "I love you, Sarah. I love your courage and your kindness and the way you tell me when I'm being an idiot. I love that you care more about my happiness than my money. And I'm not letting the board of directors decide who I can love." "But if you lose the company," "Then I'll build another one. But I can't build another you. There's only one Sarah Martinez in the world, and I'm not letting her drive away from me in this parking garage." Sarah looks into his eyes and sees that he means every word. This man who has spent his entire adult life building and protecting his company is willing to risk it all for her. "Come home with me," Alexander says softly. "Let me show you what you mean to me." Sarah knows she should say no. She should get back in her car and drive away, let Alexander save his company and his reputation. But looking at him now, seeing the love in his eyes, she can't do it. "Okay," she whispers. Alexander's penthouse apartment takes up the entire top floor of a building overlooking Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a breathtaking view of the city, and the decor is elegant but warm. Sarah has imagined what his home might look like, but the reality is even more beautiful. "It's incredible," she says, walking to the windows and looking out at the lights of Manhattan. "It's empty," Alexander says from behind her. "Has been for years, until now." Sarah turns to face him, and the look in his eyes makes her breath catch. He's watching her like she's the most precious thing in his world. "Sarah, are you sure about this? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back." In response, Sarah reaches up and loosens his tie, letting it fall to the floor. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The kiss that follows is tender and passionate, full of all the love they've been holding back. Alexander lifts her in his arms and carries her to his bedroom as rain begins to pound against the windows. Outside, the storm rages, but inside, they find peace in each other's arms. They make love slowly, gently, with whispered words of love and promises for the future. Alexander touches her like she's made of precious glass, and Sarah gives herself to him completely, holding nothing back. Afterward, they lie tangled in his silk sheets, listening to the rain against the windows. Sarah traces patterns on Alexander's chest while he runs his fingers through her hair. "I love you," she whispers against his skin. "I love you too," Alexander replies, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "More than I ever thought possible." Sarah falls asleep in his arms, feeling safe and loved for the first time in years. But her dreams are troubled, filled with boardrooms and angry voices and the sound of a company crumbling. She wakes to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee brewing. Alexander is already dressed in a suit, standing at the window with his phone pressed to his ear. His expression is grim. "Yes, I understand. 11 o'clock. I'll be there." He hangs up and turns to Sarah, who is sitting up in bed wrapped in his sheet. "Emergency board vote," he says simply. "This morning, at 11. Sarah's heart sinks. "Alexander." "It's okay," he says, sitting on the edge of the bed and taking her hand. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." But Sarah knows it's not okay. Alexander is about to lose everything because of her, and she can't let that happen. While he showers, she gets dressed quickly and starts thinking. There has to be something, some way to prove to the board that their relationship isn't the scandal they think it is, some way to show them that Alexander is a good leader who deserves to keep his company. That's when she remembers something from her old job in marketing. Financial reports that never quite added up, expense accounts that seemed too high, numbers that Victoria Sterling had access to during her visits to the office. Sarah grabs Alexander's laptop and starts searching through company financial records. She has Alexander's passwords from when she was his assistant, and she knows the system inside and out. What she finds makes her blood run cold. Victoria Sterling has been embezzling money from Cross Industries for months. Small amounts at first, but growing larger over time. Travel expenses that never were incurred, consulting fees for services never rendered, equipment purchases that never happened. And all of it was covered up using Alexander's access codes, making it look like he approved every transaction. Sarah prints out everything she can find, her hands shaking as the evidence piles up. Victoria hasn't just been trying to win Alexander back, she's been systematically stealing from Cross Industries and setting him up to take the fall. Alexander emerges from the shower to find Sarah fully dressed and gathering papers. "Where are you going?" he asks. "To save your company," Sarah says, kissing him quickly. "Trust me."
Gentlemen, Sarah says, dropping a thick folder on the conference table, before you vote, there's something you need to see. Richard Palmer looks up with annoyance. Ms. Martinez, this is a private board meeting. You have no right to be here. I have every right to defend the man I love, Sarah replies, her voice steady despite her racing heart, especially when he's being framed. Alexander appears in the doorway behind her, his eyes wide with shock. Sarah, what are you doing? Saving your company, Sarah says, opening the folder and spreading financial documents across the polished table. Gentlemen, what you're looking at is evidence of systematic embezzlement from Cross Industries. Over the past 8 months, someone has stolen nearly $2 million from this company. The board members lean forward, studying the papers with growing interest. These are expense reports for business trips that never happened, Sarah continues, pointing to specific documents. Consulting fees paid to companies that don't exist, equipment purchases with no delivery records, and all of it was authorized using Alexander's access codes. That's impossible, Richard Palmer says, but his voice lacks conviction. Is it? Sarah pulls out a security report. This shows that Alexander's access codes were used to approve these transactions from IP addresses that trace back to a computer in Paris, the same computer that Victoria Sterling has been using for the past 6 months. The room falls silent. Alexander stares at Sarah with a mixture of amazement and love. Victoria Sterling, Richard Palmer says slowly, but she's Victoria Sterling's ex-girlfriend who's been trying to manipulate her way into marriage. She's had access to his office, his computer, his personal information, and she's been using all of it to steal from this company while making it look like Alexander was involved. Sarah places one final document on the table. This is a confession email that Victoria sent to a contact in Switzerland, outlining how she planned to frame Alexander for embezzlement and take control of the company as his wife. She never meant to marry him for love. She wanted Cross Industries. The board members pass the documents around the table, their expressions growing more serious with each page.
"Where did you get all this?" one board member asks. "I used to work in marketing. I noticed discrepancies in the financial reports months ago, but I didn't have the access to investigate properly. Now I do." Alexander steps forward, his voice filled with gratitude. "Sarah, you didn't have to do this." Yes, I did," Sarah says, turning to face him. "You were willing to give up everything for me. The least I could do was fight for you." Richard Palmer clears his throat. "Mr. Cross, it appears we owe you an apology. And Ms. Martinez, we owe you our thanks." 2 hours later, Victoria Sterling is in police custody, charged with embezzlement and fraud. The board has unanimously voted to keep Alexander as CEO and issue a public statement clearing his name. The morning newspapers will run a very different story than anyone expected. "How did you know?" Alexander asks as they stand in his office watching police escort Victoria from the building. "The numbers never added up," Sarah says, "and when someone you love is in danger, you find a way to protect them." Alexander pulls her into his arms, kissing her deeply. "Have I mentioned lately that I'm completely in love with you?" "Once or twice," Sarah says, smiling against his lips. 3 months later, Sarah stands in front of a full-length mirror in a simple white dress that makes her feel like a princess. Her mother, healthy and radiant after completing her final round of chemotherapy, fastens a pearl necklace around Sarah's neck. "You look beautiful, mija," her mother says, tears shining in her eyes. "Your father would be so proud." "He is proud," Sarah says, squeezing her mother's hand. "I can feel it." The wedding ceremony takes place in a small chapel overlooking the Hudson River. Only 50 guests, family and close friends who have supported Sarah and Alexander through everything. No board members, no business associates, no photographers from society magazines. Just the people who matter. Sarah's mother walks her down the aisle, both of them crying happy tears. Alexander stands at the altar in a simple black suit, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. When she reaches him, he takes her hands in his and whispers, "You're perfect." The ceremony is beautiful but brief. When it comes time for vows, Alexander's voice is strong and clear. "Sarah," he begins, "you saved me in that elevator. Not just that day when you had your panic attack and I realized how much you meant to me, but every day since. You saved me from a life of going through the motions. You taught me what real love feels like. You showed me that some things are more important than business, more valuable than money, more precious than reputation." He pauses, his voice thick with emotion. "You are my best friend, my greatest love, and my perfect partner. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you how grateful I am that you chose to love me back." There isn't a dry eye in the chapel. Sarah's vows are equally heartfelt. "Alexander, you saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You taught me that I deserve to be loved completely and without conditions. I promise to stand by your side through every challenge, celebrate every victory, and love you more each day than I did the day before." When the minister pronounces them husband and wife, the kiss they share is tender and full of promise. The reception is held in the chapel's garden, with string lights twinkling overhead and jazz music playing softly in the background. Sarah and Alexander's first dance is to the same song that was playing in the hotel lobby in Chicago, a slow romantic melody that will forever remind them of the night they first shared their hearts. "Any regrets?" Alexander whispers as they sway together. "Only one," Sarah says, smiling up at him. "I wish that elevator had broken down sooner." Alexander laughs as he spins her around as their family and friends cheer. "Best malfunction in history." As the evening winds down, Sarah and Alexander say goodbye to their guests and climb into Alexander's car, decorated with flowers and trailing tin cans. They're headed to Italy for their honeymoon. 2 weeks in Tuscany with no phones, no emails, and no board meetings. Just the people who matter. As they drive through the city streets toward the airport, Sarah looks out at the Cross Industries building in the distance. The same building where she got fired, where she fell in love, where she nearly lost everything, and then fought to save it all. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asks, following her gaze. "That elevator.
The worst day of my life turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me." "Same here," Alexander says, bringing her hand to his lips. "I love you, Mrs. Cross." "I love you too, Mr. Cross."